Day to you. Sunday. How's your Sunday going? Yesterday, most of Ireland, all of the UK, or a lot of the UK seemed to be promised wild storms. We had a lovely, sunny, gentle day. And today started off the same, but it's heavy. I feel heavy. Didn't sleep well last night. Feel anxious. Somebody on Facebook asked about what simplicity means. And I thought simplicity is a state of inner awareness, but we support by outer experience. And that's a useful reflection. I feel anxious today. And so maybe I should simplify the day, do what is necessary, and then do something entirely for its own sake. I think I might write some music. It's entirely for its own sake because nobody ever listens to the music I write. It's purely for my own pleasure. But among the things that are necessary is fulfilling one's obligations. And my obligation to myself, the rest of the world doesn't care, but to myself is to do at least 30 days of online bibliomancy. I pick out a book, I dip in, and I see what a random sentence tells me about me. It tells me nothing about the book. It tells me everything about me. It's a very interesting process, reminding, just stimulating insights and so on. Well, today I reached into the biggest of the big bookshelves and my hand landed on Salman, Rushdie, East, West. I've read a lot of Rushdie over the years. And I have read this, but Lord, it must be 30 years ago. I remember nothing about it. It's frightening how many books I pick off my bookshelf, which I know I've read, which I remember absolutely nothing about. I seem to remember enjoying this one, though. In fact, I've enjoyed most of Rushdie that I've read. So let's see what it tells me. We take a flick. We get to page 156. Find a sentence. Never forget, said Chekhov, wagging a finger, that the British working class collaborated for its own gain in the colonial project. Never forget, said Chekhov, wagging a finger, that the British working class collaborated for its own gain in the colonial project. I don't think it's the Chekhov who's the playwright, although Rushdie does, I think, have some personal emotional relationship with Chekhov in some sense, I think. The British working class collaborated in the colonial project. Often think in terms of how those who are dispossessed by the power structure in the way the working class were dispossessed by the and disrespected by the British class structure become complicit in their own oppression, either by oppressing others. We see that now, those who have so little screaming vitriol at those who have even less, but also in somehow expecting themselves to have no more, to know their place. And as always, it's very easy to point the finger at others. I come from a family whose origins were working class, although by the time I was born, my parents had achieved a precarious middle-class existence. My father was a teacher, my mother a nurse. But the spectre of a working class upbringing, extremely poor upbringing on my mother's side, hung over my childhood and hangs still over my adulthood. And yes, my mother particularly, my father too, actually, were colonized by their upbringing and were complicit in their colonization and in passing that colonization on to us, the next generation. They knew their place. They did not criticize the ruling class. They did not aspire to anything more than really just getting by and having the odd pleasure. They became complicit in their own smallness of vision as a consequence of being treated as people who had no right to a large vision, in the way that the entitled wander through the world, assuming that everything that is possible is theirs by right. We become complicit in the colonial project, even when we are the object of that colonizing process. I know Rushdie is talking about a much more geopolitical and global phenomenon, which is undoubtedly true. I'm also aware, though, in myself, of how I become complicit in the oppression of my own grandeur at times. Perhaps you do too. Perhaps we all do. Perhaps we find it easier to oppress than we do to liberate, easier to ostracize than we do to communicate, easier to shame than to treat with compassion, easier to be on the side of the mob than to stick up for the one who is being attacked. And all of those things apply to our internal landscape as much as to our external one. Thank you, Mr. Rushdie, for all of your writing, but also for giving me some space to mull this morning. I'm going to go and ease my way through the day. May your day be full of joy, full of joy.